You know, you mentioned that Perla, your wife, had hung all your platinum records up. You weren't very good at keeping stuff because you had this bit of vagabond lifestyle, shall we say. And I guess, you lived out of a pillowcase, so one kid stole it one day. I remember that. Hey, come on, I loved your music for a long time. And that rebel side, there's something about that we all relate to. Then we had to grow up at some point, right?
Well, I like to hold on to it again.
I know, we all have it over there. But you didn't have copies of the platinums, and so Perla wanted to put them up on the wall, and she did, and you came home and you're like, I got to take these down. Why?
Because, there's a lot of different things. I think it starts with the fact that my dad never kept them. He kept them in the original boxes in the closet, and I always wondered why. And so what I appreciated is sentiment is like accolades, going all around sort of trying to pay tribute to yourself, right? So I believed in that, and then also because I was so transient, it was like I couldn't be bothered to try and make the effort to sort of hold on to the stuff, to try and carry an extra box around that was filled with gold records and stuff like that. And I used to like to give them away. It seemed to make people pretty happy. But I think as the years went by, and I finally managed to get, situated and living in one place, that I didn't really like having sort of those kind of things around because it made it feel like you sort of had nowhere else to get to. You know what I mean? So being a musician is a constant, work in progress, and you're always sort of moving forward. So anything you did in the past is great. You move on. And so having the records around just sort of seemed to sort of stop me in my tracks. So that was my feeling on it. But she wouldn't have any of it, and she put them up anyway. So.
You speak about life as a vagabond, everything in your life was transient. People who've grown up in the music industry know that you tend to hang your hat wherever you can for as long as you're welcome, then you move on to somewhere else. But when you go back over your history, you were sort of the vagabond, living everywhere from girlfriend's house to a storage unit that you were using as a practice facility.
I'm still pretty good at it. It's amazing how quickly I can acclimate to wherever and just sort of feel comfortable. It's sort of a gypsy kind of thing.
But when you look at where you are now and where you were then, do you ever say to yourself, "My God, how did I live that life?"
No. I think probably because I'm starting to learn how to be able to come off the road and actually stay in one place and not go nuts. But in order to do that, I have to work twice as hard. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm very much sort of rooted in that kind of sort of active kind of lifestyle that moves around all the time. And I just feel comfortable that way. So when it's time to go on the road, I actually get, much to my wife's dismay, I'm like, good, let's go. Because I think that's part of me.
I'm just going to cut right to the chase on this one. Chapter after chapter after chapter talking about life on the road. I was getting exhausted with all the sex and drugs.
I didn't put that much in there.
I thought, what do you do with the 25 chapters?
I left something out. I didn't want it to be like, like a sort of bragging rights. You put like a taste of it in there so you get the picture.
There's more than a taste, brother. Let me tell you. Did you ever reach a point, because you had so many close calls and you had some really crazy experiences, not only just personally but with the band, with other people. When did you finally reach that point where you said, okay, that's it, no more heroin, no more coke, no more everything else I've been doing? Was it when you found out Perla was pregnant?
Well, that was like the first time that it was like, okay. You struggle with it. You get to a point where you're going, this isn't fun anymore. And it's like excess after excess after excess. And you think about quitting, but you have a really hard time doing it. You just keep going and you put it off for another day. And when Perla announced that she was pregnant, I was loaded on Oxycontin and going to an Aerosmith gig. And I was out of my mind high that night. And so she told me as I was walking out the door. So I went to the concert anyway and came back. And I was like, okay, so now it's time to start sort of like taking care of this issue. But I thought to get juggler, which I did up until about 3.5 years ago. And then, so really, the sobriety thing is relatively new. And it's almost like you could fall off any second. But I've been holding on to it because I want to be attentive to the responsibilities that I have, and also because after years and years of doing it, it starts to get, like I said before, it starts to get old, you get tired of it. And it also becomes a piece of sort of like baggage that you have to carry around. It's like an added responsibility that you can't do this until you get that. You know, and so I just got sort of fed up with the whole thing and wanted to be able to get my music together because I did have sort of a down period where I wasn't really doing anything as a result of all that. And Velvet Revolver, it took me, like, we started out sober, and then by the end of it, I was back to where I was 10 years ago.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, do you think that's what led to so many destructive moments? Did it come down to the drugs? I mean, do you think life could have been different, maybe for Guns N' Roses, Velvet Revolver, other points in your life where you were really riding high? Do you think drugs, that was the main downfall?
You know, I think, like, you know, you bring up Guns N' Roses, I think that was more of an internal thing that didn't really have as much to do with drugs as people would like to think. That was really a personal thing between Axl and I. With Velvet Revolver, it definitely had a huge impact on how we functioned because we started out one way, and then by 2006, we were a mess, and it was hard to sort of pull it all together because all of us had our own, exercising our own demons, and so we had to get out of that and get back together, and that's how we made the second record. But then at the same time, we sort of lost Scott completely, and I would say that had a lot to do with sort of certain intake.
You know, we talk about you getting together with Ozzy Osbourne. I interviewed him in Rio de Janeiro back in 1985 when he just came to the Betty Ford clinic for the first time, and caught back up with him earlier this year. We talked about that time, and he said it was like the first of about 20 times that he'd gone through rehab, and to some degree, he's very surprised that he's still here after everything that he went through. You know, when you think of what you went through, and it's all detailed in the book about waking up in puddles of vomit and falling asleep on your leg in much the same way Eddie Money did, only he walks with the lid down, thankfully you don't. Are you sometimes amazed that you're not dead?
I'm not so much amazed. I mean, I don't think that's the right word for it. But there came a point that I was like, I'm blessed in some way that I'm still here. And it's sort of that realization that made me go, I guess I'm not going anywhere, so I might as well make the best of it. I'm making it so hard on myself.
London and Cash, your little boys,
Yeah.
they're pretty darn adorable. Would you want them to go into the music industry?
You know, I mean, you sort of, with kids, I think, I have not that much experience, but you sort of let your kids go wherever they sort of want to go and you support them. So if they decided they wanted to be in the music industry, you know, the best thing I could do is support them and back them on that, try and be as helpful as they'll allow me to be. But at 5 and 7, I haven't really seen any sort of fixed focus on that.
They're not jamming on the drums or the guitar? They show any talent? You did?
Piano, drums, guitar, they have all that stuff going on, but one of them is into sports and the other one's into art. And so, a little tinkering here and there, but not like the kind of fixation that I did when I started.